Hello and welcome to Portland Conversations. I'm Jason Allen, and today the conversation rolls on as we continue talking about the upcoming Portland elections. Hi, we're here today with Sam Chase. He is running for Portland City Council position number 2. Sam, how are you doing?
I'm doing really well, Jason. Thanks for asking. How are you?
I am just peachy. Is everyone safe and secure at your end?
They are. The teenagers are a little bit restless, but everybody's doing really well.
Excellent. Now, this must be quite a shift for you for your campaign season, having to really communicate, quarantine, so to speak. How have you and your campaign been dealing with the shifted optics and the shifted communications?
Well, it's tough. I mean, I've spent my most of my life and career working with the communities, coalition building, and so I'm really used to forums where we're engaging with communities and knocking on doors and having house parties. And so that part has been a challenge, but I do appreciate the technology that's available. And there are, there's social media and there's other ways to, talking to folks over the phone. So there are ways to stay connected.
Excellent. Yes. Okay. Let's jump right into it. Let's talk about your core. What I'd like to say, the core plank. What Sam Chase stands for. Okay. Tell me a little bit about what you want to focus on and what really drives you.
Well, I've always followed my heart to where I can have the greatest impact. And it's really been, there's been a central kind of a area of work for me has been really alleviating poverty and understanding the tools that really help people address poverty. And that's affordable housing, that's living wage jobs, that's healthcare, and a whole bunch of other things that our community provides for folks. And it's about creating the opportunity for people to succeed and making sure they have those tools. I think back to, early in my career, I was running a nonprofit building affordable housing and met a family who had come to our shelter and had been homeless only 2 weeks earlier. And we helped that person access some shelter to stabilize, to help get some resources to find a job welding again, was a welder and was able to get back on track welding. And I built and sold that person and that family a home, and they went from homelessness to home ownership in just 2 years. And
wow,
what I realized at that time is how great the need was and how much more we needed to try to achieve for folks in our community, and how many tens and even hundreds of thousands of folks needed support. So how can we really develop policy and use the tools we have to help at an economy of scale that our community needs?
Right. That's amazing in the fact that it's not just, cerebral policy, but you really took on a more hands-on approach in trying to figure out, solutions. And that's incredible. Tell me a little bit more about the background of Sam Chase. That way, voters can connect and kind of, really get to know you a little bit.
Absolutely. And I look forward to, and I'll just say this briefly, at the city, we really need leadership right now that will address and help rebuild our economy out of this COVID COVID pandemic that will truly address and solve our affordable housing challenges and our homelessness, that will bring our Portland parks back to the gem that they really are, to addressing our traffic and congestion issues and reduce our carbon footprint at the same time, and reform our city council form of government. Those are the things that we really need the leadership to take on. And building on the experience that I had that I discussed earlier, I went to another nonprofit where I focused on coalition building and reforming our urban renewal so that we were able to address displacement that was occurring. Our urban renewal system was structured so that it was actually investing in communities in ways that was displacing people of color from their communities and people, lower income populations from their communities, and really work to reform and create a system where some of those resources were invested. 30% of the resources were invested in affordable housing. That's where Nick Fish hired me based on that experience to be his chief of staff and to help him put his housing and homelessness strategy together, and really gained a tremendous understanding of the city budget and process and how the city works. And under the mentorship of Nick Fish, who I thought was, an excellent leader in our community, and I miss him personally, and I miss him as a leader at our city, and worked from there, really ran for Metro Council to address poverty and jobs and really our environment, and understanding that Metro is charged with managing our region's growth, but we weren't addressing poverty as part of that growth. And that didn't make sense to me. We really needed to make sure that everybody's getting served in our growth strategy, so that everybody has access to our economy, to our quality of life. And I went to Metro and was able to persuade the Metro Council, at first a sole voice and champion for affordable housing, and eventually was able to persuade council, the agency, the jurisdictions throughout the region that we needed an affordable housing strategy. We got an affordable housing bond measure passed. It was the first regional housing bond measure in the nation, the biggest initiative in the history of the state in terms of resources for affordable housing. Was able to develop job strategies and build the convention center hotel to help bring bigger conventions to town, bring outside dollars to our economy. That convention center pays every dime in property taxes that support our schools and human resources, so it didn't need property tax breaks. Was able to find a creative way to do that. And advocated and won low-income fares for transit riders. So those are the kinds of, that's the history and experience that I will bring to city council, and have a number of areas that I want to really tackle and bring our economy and city back to life.
Excellent, yeah. Talking about the homeless issue and the affordable housing issue, that is a daunting task under the most normal, air quote, normal of times, as we find ourselves in an economic downturn. What is that picture going to look like now coming out of this as far as homelessness and or affordable housing? Because many more people are finding themselves in that situation, or going to be finding themselves into that situation now, just because of the effects of the COVID-19. How do you and the city council, how do you not only prepare for something like that, but effective strategies to kind of address it?
Well, I do think we really need to double down on being prepared for folks to experience and struggle with homelessness and houselessness. One of the things that I think that we will be doing at the city is, one, taking the resources from the housing bond measure that passed only a year and a half ago, and so is still in the early implementation stages, and creates opportunities to really get the right kinds of housing, the right kinds of shelter in place, and really addressing the cost for that. We have an initiative on the ballot that I helped lead getting on the ballot at Metro that is going to fund homeless services and combining the housing and homelessness services is what really is going to help people get out of homelessness and stay off the streets. That's absolutely critical to have those pieces working together. And I will share with you that when I was a teenager, I lost my father to mental illness and drug addiction. And I've seen how it devastates a family and an individual. And there's no way folks can address those challenges living on the street. So it's absolutely critical that we have the support for folks, that we are getting them out of camps and under bridges and in places that are not safe and into housing. Now, what do we do at the city? Well, we're going to have that bond measure. I believe we're going to have that homeless service initiative. And it's time for us to stop focusing on the resources. I've been a tremendous advocate for resources for many years, but it's time for us to stop focusing on that, because we will have resources, and focus on the accountability, the transparency. I'm very concerned about spending those resources and getting the biggest bang for our buck out of those. And it's about reducing costs and making sure that we are really understanding what all of the cost components of building housing are and finding ways to reduce those. We're not going to, not only for how we're spending our subsidy dollars as a city, but how the costs are affecting the market in terms of building out the supply. We're falling 20% behind every year in terms of growth versus the amount of housing that's getting produced. So we're digging a hole that's deeper as we're partially filling it up. We absolutely have to make it easier to get the kind of housing we need in place, general supply of housing. Now, there's a number of different strategies I have, and I have a housing plan on my website, samchaseforportland.com. And really affecting the permitting process, the building process, and the kinds of housing that we put forward.
Excellent. As we stay on the housing subject, existing housing and especially like rent, as rent prices throughout the city has just skyrocketed over the past 7 to 9 years. How do you want to, and how does the city council want to really deal with the skyrocketing rent prices and or with rent control or et cetera? How do you want to deal with that?
Well, it makes sense to have rent stabilization measures, and we need those, but those aren't going to create more housing for the folks that don't have housing. Yeah. So the strategies like residential infill, I think, are very important strategies and mine calls for putting forward designs that really fit well into neighborhoods with neighborhoods, culturally specific communities, architects, builders coming together to say, hey, these are the designs that are going to be cost effective to build. These are the designs that are going to fit well in neighborhoods and be well designed. And you can have both well designed and cost effective. And we're going to do the homework to put those models forward, whether it's duplexes, threeplexes, fourplexes, what fits better on a corner lot, what fits better in middle lots, and different configurations in a way that will fit and will have support from neighborhoods and other communities. And by doing so, we are doing it more affordably. Now, we can also streamline the process. If folks are using those designs, we can make those top 10 designs public domain, where they are available for free. We can make sure that they get streamlined support in the approval system so that they can move more quickly through the process, that there's even technical assistance for folks who are maybe newer to the process. So I think we can make that very successful. That's not going to solve the issue on its own, but that creates units that are fairly modestly sized and more affordable in the middle income range, so that we don't have to subsidize those. Then we do well-planned corridors, and we allow development in corridors where it is able to fit better within a neighborhood and not create disruption, but actually support a vibrant community that supports small business. When we do it right, it supports small business and density along the right kinds of corridors and transportation hubs. And then the Albina vision is, another very important component for me. It's in the Lloyd District along the Rose Quarter and kind of Convention Center and Rose Garden, we can really take on quite a bit of housing in that area and create a really well-designed. I've fought at Metro for resources to bring the riverfront back and have open space there and to put affordable housing in there. We can really take on density there and take a community that already has infrastructure. It's already centrally located where it creates less demand on traffic. And we can take some pretty high density in that area in a way that really supports our economy and take some of the pressure off our neighborhoods in terms of absorbing infill housing.
Excellent. As far as the homeless situation, and I understand that, affordable housing and homelessness, often go hand in glove. As far as you talked a little bit about what I really appreciated is you addressed a lot of the mental health issues that go along with it, because I'm not sure in politics there really is that much of a focus on that area, and I'm glad that there's more of a spotlight about an awareness of that, because I think that has so much to do with the problems a lot of the people are facing in that situation. Developing a cohesive way forward for the City Council for homelessness, what would you like to see in the next 12 to 18 months, like a short range, as soon as you get in, what you want to tackle straight off?
Well, I think we're going to get this initiative passed in May. I'm very optimistic, and that's really a framework for me in terms of bringing these resources online. And one of the things that is going to be critical is working with the region. For the first time, we will have Clackamas County and Washington County saying, we're going to spend resources in our communities to support our houseless population and to create shelter and to create rent assistance that will get folks off the street much more quickly. I'd like to look at ways that we can front load that. Now, those dollars are not going to be on the ground for another year. So we've got to realize that initiative will pass, then the revenues start getting collected, and then they become available. Mm-hmm. So I'd like to identify ways we can front load some supports to really help us, especially through this COVID pandemic and addressing people's needs immediately, because when we can provide short-term rent assistance to folks, we can really avoid a lot of, it's not only the right thing to do for those families, it provides a tremendous amount of savings for us as a city when we're not having to support folks on the back end. So identifying short-term rent assistance where we can front load and hopefully use some of the future resources to cover some of those costs, because we can't just magically have resources appear. But I think we need to absolutely prioritize or we may push off some other projects and use those resources for short-term rent assistance until later. But I think we have to absolutely make sure that we are providing that safety net as a starting point.
Excellent. I want to switch gears for a second. As we move through, of course, the Portland election cycle, and then we'll move in over the summer and fall into the national picture. As far as being a part of the city council and the problems that we had over the past year of some very vociferous protests from the people, how does the city council deal with something that I'm sure is going to become much uglier now into the fall as the election, and especially the national election, really heats up?
In terms of handling protests in our city and conflicts that arise from those protests?
and really the fallout of that, because at times we saw just the temper of it come dangerously close, to outright violence. And I'm not trying to be overly dramatic, but I see it being worse, I think, this election cycle than it was last time, and definitely more polarized. And just really, how does the city council deal with a burgeoning problem, like that?
Well, I think we have to be unified as a council. We have to communicate together. I will seek to really partner with my colleagues on council and with the mayor and avoid unilateral decisions so that we do have a unified approach. I do think that separating out folks and really having safe space for whatever group it is. And I some of the hateful rhetoric and behavior that happens is something that I don't have tolerance for. But at the same time, we have to be realistic about what we are able to control and understanding where the limits are in terms of what's free speech and what's not free speech. But I think creating space where folks are separated out and not instigating conflict, and we have to find ways to get folks away from being able to come to downtown Portland, folks who are not even Portland residents, using Portland as a platform to, get that language out and get hateful language out into our community. So we need to find every avenue we can to contain that, but also be respectful of freedom of speech, no matter how much we don't like it, separating out hate speech from free speech.
Yeah. Let me ask you this question. What is one issue that maybe the average Portland voter is not on their radar? What is one issue do you think that you will have to deal with in the Portland City Council that maybe voters just aren't thinking about? Hate to put you on the spot like that. I just...
No. There's a couple of them that come to mind, and one is that's kind of been an ongoing one for me, which is really getting Portland to be a regional player with our jurisdictions around in Washington County and Clackamas County in addressing our homelessness and housing. And the economy is 3 times as large when we're talking about the region, and the challenge is a regional challenge, and Portland has been trying to triple down, quadruple down to solve the region's housing and homelessness crisis on its own. So that's one I want to continue to really get the message out there that we have to have those partnerships. I'm really proud of the partnerships that I've been able to develop as Metro Councilor on the 2 initiatives, one for affordable housing bonds, another for homeless services. The other area I think we're going to really have to grapple with is the economics of our budget and going through the budget process and really understanding, as I have gone deeply down this road before as Nick's chief of staff, sitting in budget meeting after budget meeting in 2008 when we had to deal with cuts. There are painful decisions that we have to make, and we have to be willing to really understand what can we address long-term and in a sustainable way, and what choices are we going to have to make in the short term. And I think that's going to be a process that we're going to all have to go through. And I want council to be really aligned. I hope that we'll get away from fighting for this bureau, fighting for that bureau because it's mine, and really look at a collective set of values that drive that process. And the values being, how do we make sure we're taking care of folks who are struggling and provide a safety net for folks who are struggling, who are facing job loss, who are facing the stress and trauma that's increasing mental illness or substance use disorder and other challenges. How are we making sure that we're doing everything we can for those communities? And then how are we helping small business and really bringing our economy, stimulating our economy, getting it back as quickly as possible. I can't underscore that enough. We can't pay for all these services and do what we need to do unless we really lead with a strong economy and bringing that back as quickly as we can.
How does the city of Portland move forward, do you think, in the next 10 years as this younger generation with, a very more vocal and more engaged approach, work with the city of Portland to really continue the progressivism of the city?
Well, it's something I think about quite a bit because I have a blended family with 3 teenage girls and a 12-year-old boy that keep me, and they're incredibly smart and they are very attentive and they want us to take care of the world that they're going to grow up in. And that's our responsibility. And we need to take very strong action on the objectives of and the values of the Green New Deal and a climate smart plan at the city. And we need to put our money where our mouth is. And we need to invest in ways that will really set up future generations, that will reduce our carbon footprint, that will help really support the next generation. And there's a number of things that we need to do as a city and that we can do as a city. One, I was a champion and won low-income fares for transit fares. We need free youth pass. When I see my kids getting around the city, I live in a pretty urban location and they take the bus a lot. And I see how they develop a lifelong habit getting around on transit. We need to really build out the infrastructure for transit. I've advocated at Metro and I want to see move forward a study and a strategy to build a tunnel that will get transit and light rail going under the city so that we can save significant time on our transit, that we are doing really cost-effective strategies like Rose Lanes and other things where we're helping buses either timing lights so that they can get faster through those lights, helping them have access to get around traffic where there are jams, making sure that, of course, we have safe crosswalks and safety as a priority. But when we make transit faster than vehicles, that's how we change the game on transit infrastructure. We also need to protect our parks and open space. We need to really bring back our riverfront. So many of the big urban areas that you go around the country do really a better job of creating a relationship between their riverfront and their population. And we have this incredible resource that we don't take advantage of and we don't protect. So I would like to see a substantial investment in taking back the riverfront down by the Rose Quarter as part of the Albina vision. I would like to see us take back the Willamette Cove in North Portland and turn that into an accessible natural area to create North Portland Greenway up and down the river. And then east of Willamette, we have a tremendous deficit in green space and tree canopy. We need to depave the hot spots, particularly in East Portland, and regreen them with not just trees, but other greenery that is not dependent on water, indigenous species that can self-sustain over time and take some of those heat zones out of the equation. And we need to reduce and take out diesel particulates out of our air. It's a very significant problem, and it affects lower income communities, affects communities of color disproportionately. We need to take it out of construction equipment, and I have a proposal to strengthen the city's requirements around diesel use and dirty diesel engines when construction is taking place. And I think that needs to be a part of all of the transportation projects as well, and the things that the city funds. So those are some of the very tangible kinds of things that we can do as a city, are very achievable.
Let's get out your URL again and the different ways people can get a hold of your campaign.
Thank you so much. Really, the best way is you can access my website at samchaseforportland.com. And you can follow me on Facebook and Twitter at Sam Chase PDX, and send messages and other things to that as well.
Sam Chase, position to Portland City Council. Sam, thank you so much.